Right.
Okay, so what we're going to do is in a little bit, I'm going to share you my screen, and we've got a bit of a presentation to show you, but this is going to be, it's not going to be a massively long time. Okay, so this is going to be, the focus is on trying to teach you some core fundamental things that I think are really the critical underpinning of what we do as a Cox, and what should be the basis of how we go out and perform, whether that be just in a training session, whether that be when we're looking to go compete at, say, a 500-meter race where we get to do a state boat start in your local regatta, whether we do a multi-lane race, whether we go and we are racing on the tideway, where there are no lanes, whatever it is we're doing, whether we're progressing to university, whether we're going to the international level. I think these things are really important and being a fundamental skill set for us. And something that kind of builds from it is when we kind of ask people, and I might be a bit interactive through this, so don't be afraid to come on in and chat and share your thoughts, because I think we want to, as Coxes, be able to talk to each other about things. I think within the UK, I'm gonna go out there. I'm gonna say I think coxing etiquette on the water in the UK is not as good as it could be, and I think we've got to remember we're on the same team, and we're here to support and allow training sessions and allow races to run as best as possible. We're not there to flex our ego and get in the way of one another. So if I ask a question, don't ever feel like you can't provide an answer or be nervous about sharing the answer. Like, please, come and share it. So I'm going to open up with a question to start it, and I want to know, what is the very core, fundamental, most important thing that we do as a Cox? And I'll open that to anybody. Okay, so Katie Hughes said safety. And how do we provide that safety? Steering, question mark, be confident. Yes, steering. Okay, so you're the eyes and the ears, and you're the captain of the ship, and you work together with Coxes to manage that. Fleet management. Yes, Dr. Toledo. Okay, so, and that's what that's what I'm going to talk about today. So hopefully I can have a go at sharing my screen, and you will see a presentation I prepared earlier. Screen share. Okay. Has it worked? I now can't see it on my screen. Who's the tech person? Can you guys see it? Thumbs up.
Yeah, it's here. Click your bottom bit and make it a pretty presentation.
How about now?
Perfect.
Brilliant. Okay.
So smooth.
So smooth. All right. So, welcome. Slide 1. Let's see if we can get there. Oh, I got to push the buttons. Here we go. Okay, coxing priorities. Our priorities are steering, which allows us to stay safe. Manoeuvring, which is part of steering and where we put the boat. And this leads us and allows us to run a session. So this all forms fleet management. And I think this is one of the most fundamental skills of coxing we can ever develop. And this is important to work on from when you first start out all the way through to the Olympic level. All right. So when we're racing, putting the boat in the best position is fleet management. That is steering. That is safety. That is maneuvering. And we're going to think about the things that we have to do in order to be able to do those things consistently and repeatedly. And this is going to build confidence and trust, not only in yourself and your own skill set, in your rowers, but also in the coxes around you and coaches around you. And that's really important. And umpires and officials are included within that too. So they want confidence when they see what you're doing. They want to know that they can interpret and predict and understand what you're going to do. And we want to avoid situations like these that are on the screen. So got a little one here where there is 1-8 colliding into another one. That's a big no-no. We never want that to happen. And what we want to be able to do, a prime example of fleet management, which is tested under pressure, is the boat race. So there is an ideal course that we are looking to steer, which involves steering around turns, positioning yourself within the stream on the tide where there might be a few logs. There's been fridges. Zoe can tell you there have been human beings in the tideway on race day. And we have to be able to navigate around those things by communicating with each other, by listening to the umpire, and by having trust of the people around you and trust in your own skill set that you can do that. So we talk about steering 101. This is a picture of Henry Fieldsman's feet. It's actually his entire view from the coxswain compartment. And what you can see here is you can see his hands on the rudder wires. You can see his feet barefoot. Now, I always cox barefoot or in waterproof socks because get cold feet in the winter. But if I have shoes on, I can't get comfortable in the boat. I can't feel the boat. If you're going to steer well, if you're going to steer safely, if you're going to be able to feel what's going on, you've got to be comfortable. You've got to get your settings right. And so you can see in this picture here, his handles are set for him. So they will be set at a distance where he can have a slight relaxed bend in his elbows, but his arms are fairly straight. And then he can control the rudder wires with his fingers. So he can move his fingers and his thumbs to dictate where the position of the rudder wires and how much rudder is put on when he's steering. It's also going to allow him to sit up to be able to see. So he can see on the shoulder height of the rowers. He can see it to his left, to his right. He'll be able to see his headings. He'll be able to see a little bit underneath the armpits of the rowers. So you want to sit in a position in which you can see and also never feel like you can't move in order to see better. So if you're going along and your coxes, you'll get this kind of like spidey sense, this tingle when there's something coming at you. And you know, I think a few people will relate to this. I've definitely been on the tideway. I've been out on the river, and I've been like, oh, do you know, I feel like there's a tree here, or I feel like one of the channel markers is coming up. And you have you kind of like looking where you are, and you're moving around, you can't quite see it, and then you move a bit more, and then you see it, and you're like, great, I've got it. Now, if you're scared of moving to see, it seems really silly now when we talk about it. Why would you be scared to move to get a better viewpoint? If you're driving your car, you wouldn't not check your blind spot. You turn around and have a good look at it. So when you're coxing, don't feel like you can't move to have a look. And if a rower says to you, like, oh, you're going to throw the boat around or offset it, like, that's just not true. If you seen the size of us, it's just not happening. Like, those guys have got to control their blades a little better. They've got to complete the stroke. They've got to press it out, okay? If they're not willing to allow you to have a good look, they need to check their priorities, because you need to be safe. You need to be in the best position. So be confident in doing that. So first point, check your settings. Set the boat up for you, not for somebody else. And don't feel like you're wrong in asking if you can check your settings. Sometimes you might have to sit on a little booster seat. So the Hudsons are much skinnier. Now, I can't get my hips into a Hudson. It's just not happening. But if I raise myself up a bit, then I've got a better chance to be able to see, but also be comfortable. Shouldn't be letting my legs go numb. Okay, drew a little diagram. This is an insider view of what my brain looks like. Lots of cartoon pictures. So the green bit is the bank. Here's a tree. It's kind of half in the river, half not. The red bit is no man's land. So we can navigate one way and we can navigate the other way. And what we're trying to make sure we do is we stay safe. We stay on the appropriate side of the river, and we're able to move around things. So first point of call, and one of the most basic things is, if you're on a river, and I guess sometimes in a lake too, there can be debris. There can be things moving in the stream, in the flow. When it rains a lot, all sorts is going to end up in there. The river's level rise, the river levels fall. We don't know what's going to be there. We need to be able to maneuver the boat safely around something. So when we think about our steering, we want to have kind of like a checklist in our head. Be comfortable. You're always going to look at where your bow is. So look ahead and point your bow in the direction that you want to travel. And you'll have maybe a heading in front of you, a big tall building that you're aiming at, that you're looking at. And then you're going to do a peripheral sweep. So you can look all the way to your left, and you can look all the way to your right. And what you've done is you've then seen what else is around you. How far am I from the riverbank? Am I parallel to the shoreline? If I'm not, I'm probably heading off in the wrong direction. To check that, you can double check where your bow's pointing. What am I heading towards? If you're then racing, what you've done is you've had a look at where you are. Okay, right, we're one seat up. Brill, you know where you are in terms of distance to the race. Okay, we've passed the 500 meter marker. Okay, we're 500 meters in and we're one seat up. That's great. You've also done a little bit of a sweep, and you've seen the crosswind coming over from the corner. So you can tell the rowers about the crosswind. And then you go straight back to your heading. So you know you're going either the fastest route or you know you're looking for your next heading. And if it's on a lake, you know you're going straight. If it's on a river and there's a turn, you know you're plotting your headings for your turn so you can get that angle right. So something is very basic as we sit comfortably, we've checked our settings, we look at our heading, and then we do our peripheral sweep. And that's going to allow you to spot debris in the river when you're in training. And it's also going to allow you to know what you need to say on race day because you're going to have noticed these things. And we ingrain that in when we're in those sort of training sessions. Here's another prime example. So again, we're on the appropriate side of the river. And part of steering and part of coxing well is quite simply being able to move your boat to stroke side or port, it's going to be the red one, or to bow side or starboard, and it's going to be the green one, and knowing which ones those are. So some move to starboard, some might say move to bow side, move to stroke side, some might say red or green. With an umpire within British rowing, I'm fairly confident. I remember when I was racing on rivers, they would have said move to port, move to starboard, but also they're going to reinforce that. So if you don't understand that, they might say move to stroke side, move to bow side. But knowing which sides those are is going to be really helpful for you, and knowing how to get the boat there. And that's quite simply going to be, ideally your rudders aren't, your wires aren't crossed, but they might be, so you need to find that out. But if you're in an 8, that's going to be, if you want to move to stroke side, you're going to want to put your left hand forward and your right hand back. If you want to go to bow side, you're going to put your right hand forward and your left hand back. If you're in a front loader, if you're in a 4, sometimes the steering is crossed. So you've got to kind of figure that out. And then any boat you're in is going to drive differently to the other ones. So lying down in your front load 4, the way I normally think about it is I move the handle the direction in which I want to go. So if I want to go to stroke side or port, I'm going to move the handle to the left. And if I want to go to bow side or starboard, I'm going to move the handle to right. If you're one of those unlucky ones that gets the crosswise, then you're probably going to go the opposite. And you're going to find that out when you get in. So don't be afraid when you first get into a boat that you're not used to coxing or not familiar with. Draw a little less. Tell the rowers, right, we're just going to row in pairs, or we're just going to row in 4s, nice and slowly. I'm just going to test out the rudder wires. I'm going to see where we go. I'm going to see how responsive that is. There's nothing wrong with doing that. You wouldn't get in a new car and not take it for a test drive. You'd absolutely run it out first and see how it goes.
Just jumping in, Morgan, as the bow loader person, exactly what Morgan was saying about making sure you fit the boat. That's one of the big challenges is being in a bow loader is often, I often find, and I'm not that tiny, you are basically just falling into the bottom of the boat. So it's compromising your view. And it's quite an easy thing just to be like, okay, you just get in, just go. So just make sure that if you are in a bow loader, an easy thing to have around the boathouse is like, there's like squidgy beach balls that you would normally have like when you're a kid on like plasticky because it barely weighs anything, piece of foam, rolled up kind of stretching mat, like the skinny ones, something to basically make sure you have your feet in contact with something. Otherwise, your ability to steer and brace and do it properly is going to be really compromised. So exactly what Morgan was saying, make sure the setup is right for you. And it doesn't need to be super fancy. I just use, if I'm honest, just a rubbishy piece of foam in the boat that I take to the World Championships. But it suits me, it fits. Yeah, it works.
Yeah, absolutely. And when we talk about progressing from, we're saying, okay, we're at beginner level, you're beginner to intermediate to experienced, expert, whatever you want to be. If your settings are right and you're comfortable, you're going to be able to feel the boat. And what separates a good cox and an excellent cox is their boat feel, their ability to feel what's going on in the boat. And then they just describe that and they say that to the rowers to get a change out of them that's a process. So we don't sit around and we don't call outcomes. We tell them what we want them to do. We tell them the process we want them to follow. And a result of that is you get the outcome you're looking for, which is often a technical change. And that might be a movement pattern. That might be a postural position. That might be a pushing, a press. But we'll describe how we want them to do that. And as a result, you get boat speed. So when we're looking for the distinction in levels and experience and what makes a really, really, really fast cox and what makes a fairly fast cox, it's all about boat feeling. It's all about your understanding of how you create boat speed and doing these things that allows you to do that. So without even realizing, when you've got your settings right, when you're comfortable, when you can feel a little bit more about what's going on with the boat, and then you start steering and you understand and you can feel the rudder going on and you can feel the boat responding, you're innately teaching and training your body to translate what's happening within the boat. And that is a game changer. That is the golden ticket people are looking for. But to get there, the process is understanding how to steer, how to maneuver the boat. That's what's so, so critical. Communication. Now, you think we communicate with athletes, we communicate with rowers. Athletes are coxes. So we communicate with all athletes. So don't sell yourself short in thinking, yeah, I communicate with rowers. We've got to communicate with everybody. And that means we need to communicate with each other when we're on the water. So what's happening? Are you going to take a turn? Do you need a bit more room? Will you be stopping soon? People cannot read your mind. And you've got to make sure that if there are other people on the water, you communicate with them what you need, what you're thinking. Right, I'm going to be stopping soon, and my 8 is ahead of Erin's 4, and I know Erin's maybe about a length behind me. I'm not going to stop dead at the finish and leave her no room to get past me. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go 10 strokes further, and that's going to allow us to both go through the finish line and to both turn. Other coxes won't be thinking about where somebody else is. They're only thinking about, yeah, I finished my leg. Cool, I'll just stop here, I'll turn. But they're getting in the way. They're getting in somebody else's way. They're presenting an obstacle for somebody else. And the response time, if Erin hadn't noticed, I'm not leaving her a lot of room if she's in a 4 and I've only left her a length. Not a lot of room at all. She also wants to be able to come through the finish line and finish her session. So thinking about who's around you, if you're going to be stopping, create room. Is it safe for you to stop? Do I need to leave a little bit more room? Just like you would if you were driving a car, just like you would if you went for a bike ride with your mates. You wouldn't slam your brakes on and then someone goes flying in the back of you. You'd be so angry. And we've got to make sure we don't create those scenarios when we're coxing. If you're doing a little bit of side-by-side work, if you're going to overtake somebody, if you're marshalling at an event, it might be a head race this time of year. We've got a long time we're going to wait out there marshalling for. You might need a little bit more room. You know, you're so far in those bushes. There's more bush in your boat than there is you guys. And you might need a little bit more room. Don't be afraid to just ask the other crew and ask the other cox here. Hey, look, Zoe, need a little bit more room here. It's getting a bit shallow. We're right in the bank. And they'll probably say, yeah, do you know what, Morg? I'll move out a bit. Sorry about that. Totally fine. Not an issue at all. But if you don't ask, if you don't simply ask the question, then more difficult, more challenging things comes up. And that's the same thing, say, if you think about Brooks, you know, we've all seen the pictures of Brooks racing or Brooks training, and they've got 6 8s in a line, side by side, going at it, you know, rate 20 as hard as they can. Those coxes have to communicate with each other to make sure there is enough room so they can all be in line to manage the fleet, to deliver the session that they're trying to do. They're not getting in the way of each other because that would disrupt the session and then they wouldn't be able to do what they're trying to do. If you stop a 20k row because you keep crashing into each other, the rowers aren't able to get the physiological benefit of the workout that they're looking for. They want a period of continuous sustained work. And so what makes a really good cox is someone who can allow and facilitate the training session so that the rowers can have that sustained period of continuous aerobic work. And so that's just a basic thing. We talk to each other. Hopefully you guys are starting to see how we can put those pieces together now to make you know, big changes that actually pull together more advanced coxing in the long run. Hopefully this plays. So this is at Virginia and this is 3 8s, no buoy line. So the coxes you're going to have coxes coming down the bank or down the shoreline, and they're going to be trying to draw parallel lines to the shoreline, and they're also looking at their heading. You're going to have the cox in the middle that kind of feels like they're freestyling a little bit, but they're going to be trying to hold themselves parallel to the coxswain on the shoreline, again, looking for their headings. And they've got to make sure that they don't lose that sight, they don't lose that distance, because if they come too far over, they're going to pinch the cox on the outside. cox on the outside, make sure they don't pinch both coxes that are on the inside. So you have to work together. So this, if it plays, hopefully you can see. And you saw a little clip there. So there was a clip there where Sammy looked across and then she looked straight back at her crew and back at her headings. Now, those coxes, they're working hard. They're working hard to try and have their crew work their way through and get up. They're trying to be competitive in what they're doing. But what they're not doing is going in for the clash. What they're not doing is pushing somebody out of the way. They're working together. They'll talk to each other. They'll look across. Hey, Erin, there's a bush on my right. I've just got to steer out a little bit. Yeah, don't worry, Morg. Give you a bit of room here. Zoe, pulling out a bit. There's a bush on Morgan's right. Yep, okay, coming out. And it goes like that. And you communicate all the way along and all the way back again. And you help each other out. Same thing goes for if you see something in the distance, there's a log. It's coming up to Zoe's boat. Right. Zoe, there's a log over there. I'm just going to let you know about that. You make sure you help each other out so that you can continue to move through the workout and what you're trying to do. And the same thing goes for, say, if you're trying to do drills. We're going to talk a little bit now about turning. So manoeuvring the boat. Something that holds a lot of coxes back is when they do a turn, they either don't turn with confidence, they don't turn quickly enough, or they do a turn and they end up in the wrong place. So here's a little diagram. The green bits are going to be the riverbank. The red bit, no man's land. No one wants to be there. That's going to be the danger zone. So we don't want to be traveling up or downstream in that zone. Not safe at all. So we want to make sure that we stick to the correct side of the river. Now, if you do a tap turn, and that's often when people kind of sit still and they just tap their hands, you're going to turn on the spot, which is these two diagrams here. You're going to turn much more on the spot if you've done your tap turn properly. That means that if you need to turn from one side of the river to another, a tap turn simply is not appropriate. It's not going to get you there. It's going to take you a long time. So if we're trying to turn around, if you're trying to turn around isolated in your own lane and go back the way you came in the same lane, you'd probably do that in a tap turn if you do your tap turn properly, your turn on the spot. But if you need to go to the other side of the river, it's going to take you far too long if you're just tap turning, or you're going to end up in the wrong place. And that puts you in a dangerous position, but it also means the session takes so much longer because coaches and other coaches are waiting for you to get ready. So one of the best things I ever learned, and I learned this at Oxford, my coach, Christine Wilson, she would say, draw a rectangle. So you're going to finish up what you're doing. You're going to start your turn to get your boat around with power. You're going to paddle across with either 6 of your boat or all of your boat to the other shoreline, to the other bank, and then you're going to finish your turn. This is significantly faster than turning any other way. It means that you don't lose water. So if we start a turn and we just use power, we're going to draw a diagonal, or we're going to fly across, and we're going to run out of track. And we want to make sure we're turning as quickly as possible, but we're maximizing our position. We're maximizing the mileage we're able to get into that session. So we go straight for the other bank. Another way is when you get the one side rowing. So if you finish, one side holds and one side rows on, you lose water. You do lose the distance from which you finish. So you either drift further downstream, or, well, if there's stream, you're gonna drift further down as you're doing this turn, or you're gonna drift further upstream depending on what's going on. So when you're rowing around, you're gonna lose that distance. Okay. You can do this turn, say, if the red line was a dead lane on a buoyed course and you wanted to swing round and miss a couple lanes and go back through into another one. It takes longer. It's still going to be quicker than a tap turn. I mean, you can use power, and you have an opportunity for the rowers to practice using their legs on the one side to bring the boat around. Now, if they don't put enough pressure down, it makes it much harder for you to turn. So if they're just using their arms, they're not practicing the stroke, for starters, but it's going to be much harder for you to turn that boat around. And you want to remember that any time that a rower takes a stroke, they are practicing the strokes they're going to take on race day. So if they use their legs and they row the boat properly, then they're continuing to ingrain in the style and the practice of rowing that they want to do under pressure. The last little bit. How do these skills come together so that you can successfully run a session? Now, we've put these things together a little bit more already. We've talked about them before, but if you're able to steer, if you're able to turn and maneuver the boat safely, These are the skills that are required to run a successful session or a successful practice. Now, the drills, running of different drills, these can happen once you've mastered this very simple skill set. And you're going to continue to do this all the way throughout your coxing careers. And this might be on your own if you don't have a coach. This can also be with multiple boats if you do have a coach. Once you start to do these things, and we've already spoken about how you get your settings right, you're comfortable, you can see where you're going, you start to build confidence in where you're steering the boat, you build confidence in your communication with the rowers, with the other coxes, with the coaches, then your boat feel starts to increase and starts to improve because you feel less under pressure, your head's less in the red mist. You can start to listen to how the boat sounds, you can start to feel what the boat's telling you, and your ability to translate what's happening within the hull starts to improve, starts to enhance. Then your technical understanding, your knowledge of how to create boat speed, how to maneuver the rowers into better positions, better blade work, how to create a better turn of speed, that starts to evolve. Okay, here's a few little scenarios for you. So, bottom scenario, this is what we spoke about earlier. How communication works. We're looking ahead. We're looking for our headings. Where are we pointing our bow? And we're looking in our peripheral. Am I parallel to the shoreline? How far am I off the other coxes or the crews around me? In this scenario, I can't remember the names I put down. Did I put down Zoe and Morg? Okay, so we've got two coxes. I'm going to say Zoe and Morg. Can't remember what I've said here. But what's happening is the cox in the middle is getting a little bit squeezed. Quite simply, just going to ask for a little bit of room. So the cox in the middle is saying, hey, Morg, look, can you move to stroke side? I need a bit more room. There is nothing wrong with asking another cox around you. It might even be a double. It might even be a double score. It might be a cox's quad. Asking the crew around you to move out to provide you a little bit more room and tell them where you want them to go. The exact same thing happens in racing. If you're doing a head race and you're on the fastest line and you're coming in for the overtake, you want to hold your line and you want the slower crew to yield. So what the best thing to do is to tell that crew where you want them to go. You might say, Stourport, I want you to move to stroke side. And you'll say that again. And again, you might say, Molesey, move to bow side. Thank you. It's as simple as that. But if you communicate clearly and tell them where you want them to go, it's much easier for all the crews involved to be able to get through the situation safely, to continue to move at the speed at which they're moving at, to have their best race. Another example is running a training session where one crew's got about quarter of a length up. Now, if they don't stop that, they're going to be half a length up. Then they're going to be a length up. Then they're going to be open water. And a coach might be trying to run you guys side by side because they want to do some drills or they want to coach you together. So part of coxing is making sure that you manage the fleet so the coach can coach. It might even be that you're training on your own without a coach and you want to be able to row with some other people. You're going to have a better session if you can row side by side with people. So if you're pulling out on your head, simply add a pause. Right, we're going to add a pause at body shift on this one. Go. And then whilst you're doing that pause, you're slowing your boat down. You're allowing the other boat to catch up. But also you're practicing something. You're reinforcing the body positions that you want to be in by body shift. You're reinforcing the timing of one shift out of bow, and you're giving your boat a better opportunity to improve their standard of rowing. So adding a pause is not a bad thing. And quite often people can get frustrated and say, why are we slowing down? See the opportunities that come from allowing boats to come back together. It might be that you drop the rate from 18 down to 16 and you say, right, let's see if we can get the same speed but down at rate 16. Now that's hard work. You've got to stay together. You've still got to move in time with the boat. It's hard to control. We've got to control more, demand more out of our bodies, out of our body positions. So there is a bigger opportunity in developing and enhancing the quality and the standard of your rowing, and with that your boat feel, if you can do things that manipulate the speed of the hull and allow the fleet to stay together. And that presents, again, another learning opportunity in which you can enhance and develop your skill set. So it's a very simple way that comes from the simple skills we've spoken about the steering, about the communication, about the manoeuvring of the boat, how we handle it, how we find our heading, how we do our peripheral sweep, how we check we're parallel to the shoreline, how we draw parallel lines to each other that allows you to enhance the skills that you've got as a cox. Right. 8's head. I can't tell if this is men's or women's head. I stole it from the internet. So, prime example, here's a visual representation. So these crews here, everyone's going to be jostling for the best position. They want to be in the fastest water, in the stream. You're going to have to look ahead. You're going to have to point your bow at your heading in the right direction. And you're going to have to use headings because the tidal is difficult. It's hard to know whether you're going in the right direction. Everyone talks about that second lamppost. You can hit that lamppost at any angle you want to. And that doesn't mean your boat was in the right position when it started. So being parallel to the shoreline, seeing where the crews are around you, looking for your headings in the very distance. Once you're underneath a heading, it's not your heading anymore. It's too soon. It's too close to you. Your heading is a long way away from you. It's right in the distance. It's what you're aiming for as a long shot. That's going to put you right place, right position. And you look behind. You see what's behind you. You see who's coming after you. You can see who's trying to do an overtake. You see if you've put away. And you also see what's happening with the distance, with the margins. Am I in the right position? Is it about to get really wavy? All those things, they're just there as a result. You're able to do them because of your steering, because of being comfortable, because of having your settings right, because of being able to maneuver your boat, being able to communicate. That is where we make big steps. That's where we do our job as a cox incredibly well. Last little bits. We've got a few more webinars coming up. So we've got the level 2 version, probably going to reiterate a few of the things we've spoken about here, which is going to be on Monday, the 20th of November. Erin is going to be running that one, and it's going to be an intermediate advanced version of the How to Be a Winning Cox. You can scan the QR code. Hopefully it works. If not, we will send out a link. Don't worry. Next one, we've got the Monday, the 4th of December. That is going to be with the legendary Tilda. And that's about developing your leadership skills at an intermediate to advanced level. Definitely check in on that one. And then this one's going to be an absolute banger. Monday, the 11th of December, is going to be developing your confidence in your coxing. Part of coxing is being able to communicate in a confident way when you're actually quite nervous. And that's a real skill that transpires all the way through into your working life. And you'd be surprised at how useful it is. So scan that QR code. I did make it so there is a strong chance that it won't work. Technology is not necessarily my strong point. And that's going to be with the fabulous Dr. Toledo. And I'm pretty sure that we might get a surprise visit from another WOX mentor, but we're just checking on that one. But that will be the wonderful Sasha. Last but not least, November, our designated charity is Love Rowing. So anything you can pop that way would be marvellous. Even if it's just £1 or, I don't know, cost of a Freddo, must be about 50p. 50p more than nothing at all. So any support is very, very much appreciated. And I'm going to end the slideshow so you can ask some questions and I get to see all your lovely faces. Right. Any questions? Don't be scared. There must be some burning ones out there. You can type them if you're really worried.
Hello, Morgan Baynham-Williams.
Hello.
It's not a question. It's kind of a statement question. So one of my pet peeves is when you're doing pieces against another crew and the other crew is like constantly tapping up to try and like get a seat on you to start. And that really annoys me because I kind of think, well, wouldn't it be better if we actually just started level and everyone had a good time? So the thing I've always struggled with is how to kind of negotiate that with another crew if it's not someone I'm used to working with. Have you any recommendations for how I might kind of say, look, let's not mess around, let's just do the best for our crew kind of thing?
I think in an ideal world, you have the conversation on land first if they're from your same club or you know you're going to do something together. But sometimes we end up in these situations where we're out on the water and someone's like, oh, do you want to do something side by side? And I'm like, yeah, all right, okay, cool. I think it's being confident enough to say there's nothing wrong with saying, right, let's start at like as far back as we can. Don't keep tapping forward because we're going to lose water. Let's start level. Everyone get level. Hold where you are. Or I do think going from stationary is the best thing to do. So everyone starts at run stops. And it's just trying to communicate with each other and being patient at that. So sometimes one of the most nerve-wracking things to do is simply to say to the other cocks, okay, look, let's start level. Let's stop tapping up there. And then you've got to see what they say back. You can't control what other people are going to do. I would also say that sometimes you can pick people up on the run. I think often that doesn't work out very well. And this is why I think improving coxing etiquette, certainly in the UK, is really important, because many, many times I've been in that scenario. And it doesn't matter how many times you have that conversation, you say, let's start level, stop tapping up. It's unfair. Sometimes people just keep doing it. And that might be a situation where you have to debrief that off the water. And if they can't be mature enough to row side by side, they can't be mature enough to row side by side. You could also try, if you're gonna go side by side in their stream, then if they want to start up, they can start up, but they can be going against the stream and we'll go down the bank. Often people don't like that either, but it can be a little bit of like a trial and error. And I think it's starting to build confidence that I do really believe actually should be led by coaches. But if we as a team of coxes, and this people, all the athletes on this call right now, this is a team of coxes, we have to make the etiquette better, because we're there to be a team. We're there to get the most out of each other. And that's what makes a difference in our performances. That's what makes a difference in our trajectory. I'm just looking in the chat box. At Cambridge, went to head this weekend. We had some issues with crews trying to undertake around tight corners. Any suggestion on how to politely communicate with them when they haven't communicated? So I get the impression here. So George, were crews undertaking without telling anyone they were going to make that overtake?
Yeah, they weren't telling us anything. It was only because obviously I could hear their rowers that I could even tell that they were coming round near me.
I think that what I would do is I'd just move out of the way myself, make sure I was safe, let them do their thing, then I'd carry back on with what I was doing. I think all we can change is what we can do, and we as coxes are on this call. People, that's not how we roll. It's not nice when someone just comes out of nowhere and comes flying up the inside. So be the one that communicates, be the one that lets people know. And I think that's the only thing we can do, really. Got another one. Coxing seniors for the last 6 months and learning to cox as a junior, but I feel like sometimes they're a lot more experienced than I am. How do you deal with feeling insecure with your knowledge as a younger cox? That's a really good question. I would say those insecurities, they don't necessarily disappear. They pop up at times when you least expect it. Happens to all of us. I think what you've got to remember is rowing is a very simple sport where we need to move in time. We sequence arms, body, slide, and then we use the legs to push the boat past the face of the blade. And that's all we're trying to do. And if you give those simple basic commands, they have to follow those commands. And you can never force a rower to do anything. They simply are going to decide if they want to do it or not. But if you communicate that you have a shared interest in making the boat go as fast as possible and having the best session you can have, there's nothing more than you can do. Novice session. How do you deal with backseat coxing from stroke, even people further down the boat? Good question. Now, what I always try and do is I always have a little quiet conversation with the stroke seat, or sometimes the 7 seat. And I would say that I keep it fairly quiet, not very often. But what I would say is I would have a conversation with that person that's talking and say, look, I value what you can feel from the boat because it's really helpful for me. However, it is often distracting. So what I will try to do in my coxing is provide an appropriate time in which I can ask you what the boat feels like. And then when they provide their feedback, then it gives you all an opportunity to get on the same page and progress from there. So a stroke seat can be really useful. And the same thing in a bow loader, the bow seat. They can feel slightly different things to you. Often they can feel the same thing to you, but they feel it in a different way. And that's really useful information to know. They can also tell you if a crew is coming flying up on you. They can tell you if you're moving away from people. And just investing time calmly, patiently, respectfully, building communication, building that relationship between you and that individual can be a real game changer in what you do. You mentioned crew not being happy with you dropping back on your head and paddling. Any advice for how to manage when crew members question or challenge you? I would say that you've got to make sure you clarify the purpose of the session. So if the purpose of the session is to row steady state, side by side, then the purpose is to remain side by side. It's not to pull away. If the purpose of the session is to be competitive and to see who's fastest, and that might be at rate 20 as fast as possible, then you continue to move away, or then you continue to close that gap. And it's making sure you have the confidence, A, yourself, you understand what the purpose of the session is, and B, you then reinforce the purpose of that session with the members of your boat. Also experienced backseat coxing, shocked to run my session. Very insecure questions. Handling the backseat coxing, yeah. I think it's just building that relationship, I think is really important. This is a good one. So Charlotte says, I'm really good friends with the rowers in my boat, but it means they sometimes forget I'm in charge of the sessions running smoothly. Any advice on how to stop the chat and get a session going with some focus? Also, any ideas to use as a booster seat in an 8? You know the seat pads that rowers use? Just sit on a few of those. Or you can get a like a little workout physio mat. Just cut out a little rowing size seat from that and just sit on a few of those. They make a big difference. But so with other rowers that you're friends with, in terms of making sure that you remain in charge, I would say compartmentalization is important. So there's a time to laugh and there's a time to focus in and switch on. And I would say, like, all right, guys, look, we've had a good laugh there. We're going to focus up for this next leg and just give them a target time, give them a target period of time to focus. So it might say this next section from the boathouse to the bridge, we're just going to focus in and we're going to focus on this thing. And it's something as simple as that to bring them back on board. If they still continue to mess around, be like, guys, we really need to focus up now. This is disrupting the session. And then you might have to say something to the coach, or you might say, if you don't want to focus, we can go in and we'll go out with somebody else. And I think they can see it in your tone. So it's not whining, it's not having a go, it's saying, we're here and we want to focus in, we want to have a good row. We've had a bit of a laugh, we're going to have a laugh when we get to the top again, when we go on the turn, but then we're going to focus back in. And now's the time to focus in. And then you can say later on, you can say, yeah, good job, that was a real good leg there. And you can have a little laugh about it. But it's being able to use the tone of your voice without being condescending to kind of trigger and guide where the energy is going. Mentioned overtaking a slow boat in a head race. How do you deal with crews that do not go out of the way even when they are slower? And this is really challenging. I would say it's being consistent or persistent in telling the crew where you want them to go. If a crew ultimately doesn't move, I would just move myself a little bit. You're not going to lose loads of time by moving a little bit. I think it's important to make sure you don't collide. I would always avoid the collision. But by you moving a little bit, then continue to keep asking them to move. That's all that you can do. But if you've got to go around, you've got to go around. They don't get anything from that. They're still being overtaken. They're still the slower crew. It's not good coxing from them. You can only control what you can do. You've got to make the best of the situation that you're in. Zoe gave some good feedback here. So she says, one of my coaches, when I was a junior, used to say, you don't cox to be liked, which didn't mean I should be mean or not have friends in the crew, but it reminded me that I needed to be in control. I think that's really useful, is that you actually get a lot more respect if you remain focused on the task at hand and give people different processes, different jobs to do, and that allows you to have a better session. In an uncoached or little coach setting, what's happening here? Once have the experience where rowers and they just paddle continuously, and however, want pausing, get the balance right, recovery. How do we balance having an enjoyable outing versus a productive outing? I think both an enjoyable, I mean, way I see rowing is a productive outing is also an enjoyable one. But I would say sometimes people just want to row. I do understand that. I would factor in opportunities to do those drills. So I would maybe put them in the warm-up. So it might be you do some short slide work as they're starting to warm up. And then say we're going to evolve the warm up a little bit. And we might add some pauses, and that's going to bring the crew together a bit more. So what you do is you provide a window before the continuous rowing to then do those things. And that means that the way they think about the session is that they're like, okay, yeah, we're still warming up, so I can be not continuous for a bit. It's kind of tricking them into that scenario. You could also say, how about we do some longer stretches of continuous, and then we'll break up with a couple of pauses, and then we'll go again and see what they say. But again, it's a little bit of trial and error, just trying to figure those things out and see what the responses are. You mentioned before about not worrying about leaning out to get a better view of what's ahead. Relatedly, how often should you check those blind spots to prevent hazards developing, especially on a really busy stretch? Always check your blind spots, I would say. So you're always looking ahead of your heading. And then I would say, I can't really give you a number of strokes, but I think on a continuous moving kind of river, like you're always trying to listen to hear what's around you. I would say this is where if you don't talk all the time, you present an opportunity to hear more. But also just to have a look. But I would look fairly regularly is what I would say there. And I think your gut will probably know that. If you feel like you don't know what's behind you, then you haven't looked often enough. You should be able to kind of have a bit of a picture in your mind of like, okay, that was there before. I've gone 500 meters. I haven't looked at all. You've probably gone too far. You want to build up a bit of an idea, and also knowing, when you look at a turn, when you take the turn and before you paddle off again, have a bit of an idea how many people were in that turn with you or how many people were queuing to do that turn. And you might get a bit of an idea of how many people might be coming up behind you. The other thing I would say is make sure you're in the correct position on the river. So you can tuck in a little bit. I would also say get your stroke seats or the bow seat to communicate with you regularly. So they should be looking ahead. Eyes over the stern. They should be able to see crews coming, and they want to make sure they tell you what's coming up. Right, we made it to the end of the questions list. Hopefully you guys have found that useful. If you come up with any other question, please don't hesitate. You can either email thewinningcox@gmail.com, or you can quite simply send us a message on our Instagram @thewinningcox. Remember those dates we've got coming up, which were I'm just checking them. Monday, the 20th of November, which is going to be our How to Be a Winning Cox Intermediate to Advanced session, run with by Erin. Monday, the 4th of December, which is going to be developing leadership skills for the intermediate to advanced or experienced group. That's going to be with Matilda. And then Monday, the 11th of December, developing confidence in coxing with Zoe, with a guest of honor. It's going to be Sasha. All right. That's all from me. Thank you very much for joining.